Where'd you play basketball this morning?
Over there at the Montpelier Rec Center.
Oh,
Every Friday at 6:30.
Okay.
Was there good live?
We're live. Okay, we are live this morning. It's Friday, January 20th, and it's the Senate Transportation Committee. And we're going to continue our discussion on different parts of the CPT transportation. We've been going over the different departments this week. We will continue today with Operations and Safety Bureau. And Josh, would you tell us a little something about what you do?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Josh Schultz. I oversee the Operations and Safety Bureau at VTrans. It's part of the Highway Division, so I report to the Chief Engineer, Ann Gamble. And I brought with me here Allison LaFlamme. She oversees within the OSB, the Operations and Safety Bureau. She oversees the State Highway Safety Office, and also retired Captain Paul White from the Vermont State Police. He's now part of our team as a law enforcement liaison individual who helps us also in the Office of Highway Safety. So
How many years of state police?
30 total, 24 full-time, 6 as an extra.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
That's a tough job.
yeah, he's invaluable to have.
Yeah.
He speaks fluent cop, I always say. He knows how to interact with them. Like you know that environment. So it's amazing having him on our team.
Every time I see an officer, I want to thank him for all the stuff they have to go through these days. It's such a challenging occupation.
Yeah.
Definitely different now than it was 30 years.
Darn right. Yeah, and I don't know. I just, like I said, when you see what they're going through to protect us, it's unheard of sometimes. But anyway. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I know we're kind of a little bit late getting started, so I just want to let you all know, I have a presentation. I can roll with the presentation, but if there are certain topics that you all would like, as I'm going, if you want me to go in a certain direction, I just want to make sure I provide you with, well, the overview, probably just refresh your memory,
Okay.
but also with any key information you need to govern. So if you have specific questions or specific areas, take us there and we'll answer your questions as best we can. If we can't, we'll get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So Alice, the page.
It's not advancing?
No, go figure. I'll try page down, page up. It's like things may
It
be.
should be a PowerPoint. There it goes. You just
Just
get a little harder.
hit it a little harder. Okay, all right.
It always works better.
Just so you all know, this isn't my laptop. My laptop died,
I know
so
this is safety,
Yeah.
not maintenance.
yeah, right. So just on with our mission and vision, we focus on our bureau on the safe and efficient part. We're about safety and mobility of the highway, whether it's behavioral or infrastructure. We're trying to use data to figure out where on the infrastructure we've got to focus our attention as an agency. And as far as behavior, we look at data to figure out how can we grant money or how can we work with our safety partners to try to improve the safety on our behavioral safety on our highways and getting people where they need to get to safely and on time. As far as our organization within our bureau, we're made up of 5 different sections. We have our Signals and Intelligent Transportation Systems, or ITS. Basically, just to really simplify that, it's electronic stuff next to the road, whether it's a traffic signal or whether it's a data collection device that's getting us weather, road conditions, or the road temperature. We use all that data to help us maintain the roads, but also we share that with the public. And we do have some cameras on there that are not streaming. They take still shots. You may have seen them. They're on our website. And so people can go on to ID9 and look at different cameras and be like, oh, it's snow covered. Maybe I should leave 10 minutes early today. So that's the goal of that. And so we also have some traffic counting devices that are electronic that we were able to see what the volumes are and even the speeds in some cases.
Would your division be the ones in charge of the pilot that we did on the cameras for the construction zones for the speed? Or we did or are doing?
We were looking into it. I think you're thinking about the automated speed. It wasn't enforcement. It was
Yeah.
like education.
Yeah.
Yes, that was us. We were looking into it. We had provided a report last year. And the challenge with the automated speed education, it was that the Federal Highway Administration, it's not eligible for federal funding. And so in our report, we found out that it was going to cost about $1 million and to put that program into, even just for a few work zones, to put it into effect. And
So we never tried it.
we never tried it. And it's a lot of money. And it was, normally when you have enforcement, there's a way to get through tickets, you can kind of pay it back. And without doing the enforcement side of things, we're going to have to just basically pay for it out of pocket. And so we're looking at, well, are there other ways we could spend $1 million as a state to improve safety or, change behavior? And also we're not entirely sure how effective it would be if it was just the education side. We just don't know. There hasn't been that happening around the country before. So,
But there are other states that do it.
other states do the enforcement side, and a lot of them, what they do is they start with education. So they'll send out a couple letters, and then after you get maybe one or two, I don't, it depends, but let's say 1 or 2 letters, next thing you know, then you start getting tickets. But we were looking to just, no tickets. We just want to do education, send out letters. And so that's where it stands right now. It's not completely off the table as far as our table. The administration does support the education side of things, but with the funding, it's just not something that we're particularly interested in right now because of that big price tag. So that's where that resides. And I think the report still exists. It was sent in last year, and I think it's actually might be on your website, or it's the government's website. Yeah. Our traffic operations team, the other one up there on the top, it's pretty simple, like signs and lines, right sign, right place, right line striping in the right place. And they're also heavily involved in like the safety side of things with infrastructure. So I mean like signals and sharp curves where we might see some crashes and things like that. Those folks get involved. Our highway safety office, and Allison and Paul are here from that office. They're the ones that really focus on the behavioral side of safety, and they get heavily involved with law enforcement, of course, but other safety and the safety partners, whether it be like Department of Health or education. And they're also the ones that grant the bucks over to those people, those different entities, so that they can employ some of those safety improvement programs.
Saw a new one this morning, slow and slush, don't rush.
Yeah, that's a good segue, Senator. That's the TMC, our Transportation Management Center.
The first time today, it made a lot of sense.
Yep. They're the ones that are doing that. They're the ones that sometimes, I always cross my fingers sometimes because we try to keep it funny. We get a lot of positive feedback as an agency about some of the comical things we put on our signs.
You remember if they're funny.
You do. And so we try to do that, but I always like, oh gosh, I just wait for that time that someone writes in saying, well, I found that offensive. And so we're really trying to be careful to keep it positive and funny. And we vet it through multiple people before it actually gets lit up, but still it's like, oh, we're, But that's our TMC folks, and they're the ones that are like, right now, I guarantee you, if we were in the TMC room, the radio would be constantly chattering. They'd be on the phone with police dispatch, working with them to make sure that if they need any support from VTrans for, just from AOT in general, road closures, whatever, they're the ones that are like on the radio, kind of the hub of communication for VTrans, working with, emergency responders, our plow folks, maintenance folks that are out there in the roads. And
They
so-
always slow down. That's it. They just can't get that message. Slow down. In the winter time, they just don't get it. There's
That's why
something-
Route 2 is better. People don't overdrive it.
They don't overdrive it.
No, they don't. They do not overdrive it.
They do, they just, they.
I know they do. That's what I'm saying. You got
That's why
2
we're not
lanes, you
gonna
gotta
do
go
it.
fast and,
Yeah.
so.
Yes,
I think
sir.
some of those stretches are dangerous.
So the TMC, those signs, I gotta say, my wife loves them, and she always says, make sure people know that whoever's doing them, they're doing a great job. But secondly, they're all temporary, like they're mobile units, right? But it seems like they're very effective. Would it be cheaper, more reliable, longer use if we looked at permanent digital signs along our interstates?
good question. And yes, we are changing them over to permanent. And so in some cases, you'll see some more permanent ones out there. And you're right, they last longer. The ones that are the mobile ones, they tend to rust out, and all of a sudden we go to change that, we're like, oh my gosh, we can't even get tires back on this thing. And, you know, we get them out of there and we rehab them or replace them, but we are doing that and making them more and more permanent as we go.
And those are permissible. You obviously have to comply with the MUTCD
Yeah.
requirements.
Yep, and we do,
Our state board requirements.
Right, exactly.
yep, and we do, and we have to, but we have to be careful, like with some of the messages we put on. For example, COVID-19, when that happened, before that, we would never have been able to put anything in there about the vaccination sites or things like that. We couldn't have done it, but we worked with the Federal Highway Administration and Secretary Flynn did personally and made it so that we could make that happen. But so there are ways to bend the rules when you work with people and it's an emergency type situation. But generally, yeah, we have to be real careful with what we post, and it's got to be transportation related or safety related. And yeah, so, and we get lots of requests from even Vermont State Police sometimes. Hey, you know, we want to kind of advertise an event, and it's a public event. You know, it's no one's making money off of it, but we're like, you know, we can't because it's not related to the safety or the safety or the mobility of the roadway. And so there's some challenges, but we work through them. And then the last section we have is the data management team, and that's one of our newer sections. And we're really getting more and more robust with our data and how we slice and dice that data, and having our infrastructure safety folks up here and our highway safety, the kind of the behavioral side, and the same bureau working together. That it's not just about infrastructure and it's not just about behavior. Gee whiz, let's work together on both those fronts on the same initiatives and you know, get more efficient that way. So we've been doing that more and more over the last, you know, 3-4 years and seeing a lot of good stuff happen. This is just letting you all know, you know, hey, we're really customer driven. We work with the public. Public doesn't really care and shouldn't care when they're driving down the road. Who owns this road? Is this a town maintained road or is this a state maintained road? And they're not asking themselves that question. I might when I'm driving because of my job, but I'm one of like 10 in the state. But so we really try, as our bureau, we really try to make it seamless for the public. So if there's issues or if they're having challenges on a municipal road, we'll step in and we'll help the town if they want our help and provide some of our expertise, because these towns, a lot of them, they don't have town engineers. They might have a select board and, you know, a town clerk. And so we always offer our help if we can help them. And in some cases, we can even do it monetarily through grants, safety grants, things like that. So just we're always trying to keep in mind, you know, who do we work for?
What was the part on there about footprint? Is that like you don't want to build new roads, or what are you saying existing footprint with?
Yeah, it's just that's across the country, but in Vermont, especially in Vermont, but across the country, there's not a lot of new roads happening like back in the 60s with the interstates and, you know, getting built. And so what we are is the operations side of our house, which is the efficiency part. We recognize like we're not going to probably widen the road in a lot of cases. Sometimes, you know, adding lanes, and we do at times, but a lot of times we can't do that. And we're probably not going to put a new road in. You know, the days of bypasses, they're fewer and far between anyway. And so how can we improve efficiency on our existing footprint through maybe technology and signage, and, you know, even letting people know like, hey, this is what's going on ahead. Maybe they want to take a different route or stop and get a cup of coffee. So just communication.
So Senator Chinman should give up on his idea of a new exit in South Burlington.
He wants it to go right through his house. You know? I know you got that on a miscellaneous bill. Yeah.
The other thing about footprint on bridge construction, if you have to get into the Act 250 and you're getting into an environmental change, so that gets into the numerous examples of trying to keep within that existing footprint. Sometimes detours, so you're doing a very quick, you know, one of those accelerated bridge projects and so forth.
Yep.
So that's another example where it makes it much faster and less costly than if you were trying to put another bridge. But you did have to out here by the U-232, Unit 32.
Right.
Yep.
You're-
That did require a separate bridge, probably because of the traffic volume or,
Yeah, that one, and well, also traffic volume and also just for the ability to do construction. And yeah, so the volume was too great there to be able to do like one lane, have flaggers out there. But we do, you'll see temporary bridges a lot for the mobility, just to allow, like what you said, just allow that two-way traffic to go. So almost the drivers, I mean, they know there's a project that's going through a work zone, they'd have to slow down. But other than that, it's kind of still a seamless commute for them when they're, their commuter trying to get freight or whatever through. And that's our goal. And those short-term closures, like you mentioned, it's the same kind of thing. Like, you kind of weigh it like, hey, why don't we do a detour, and that'll keep people moving, get to where they need to get to, and let's just bang this thing out real quick in like 3 weeks, a month, and then so just different strategies, and we're involved in that, and we work with our project designers and that whole team when they're trying to evaluate those different options. So again, just looking at trying to keep it efficient but also safe. This is just a slide. I just wanted to kind of go over a few things that we've been working on over this last year, in some cases, a couple of years. But we're really putting a big emphasis on the data side of things. And I'll show you guys a little bit in a few slides from now about that data. Our highway safety improvement program has been a big effort for us, especially this last year. And really, we're focusing more on the data side of the house and really trying to slice and dice that data in ways and look at the behavioral and the infrastructure data, the crashes, like the locations, but what's causing them, and make sure that our funding is aligned with where the problems are. And I will go into that in a second. I've got another slide on that to show you all of
511.
And then 511. So we have changed I don't know if you all have been on there, but we have changed in recent months the face of our 511. It's on our website under the New England Compass. If you go to our main page, you'll see New England Compass. Click on that. And so it's a new system, and it's kind of looks very Google Mappy when you get on there, and it's also, even when you turn on layers and turn off layers, it's kind of like Google Maps, and so it's a lot more user friendly. It's a lot easier to set up personal, like my trips or personalized trips, so you can get text alerts, email alerts, whatever you want. If there's, say, a crash on the road and the road's closed, or it's mobility is hindered, you could get a text. I get them. I've signed up for it and I get them. And so if there's a crash on I-89 between here and Burlington, for example, I'll get notified. So
Don't text while you're driving.
don't text while you're driving, right? It's,
Okay.
exactly.
Is that tied into the BT alert system?
BT Alert, yes, it is. We work with BT Alert, and so it's a kind of a two-way door. So we share our information with them, so they can do that through BT Alert as well. In fact, I'm signed up for that. So
Yeah.
most of the time I get 2 separate alerts on my phone for the same event, sometimes 4. So it's,
So that would be like, well, my son, when he goes to Rhode Island, Quincy, Mass, it's
Yep.
always a bottleneck. He can go on, he's got an app. Is that New England that would tell you delays, traffic volume, backup? Is that on my trip, or is that, or is there an interface with this traveler information system?
yeah, it won't give you so on our 511 won't give you the delay, and that, like, it won't tell you the time, and unless it won't know, because it won't know where you're going. It'll say you've signed up for alerts on this segment of the highway. There's something happening there, and so then at that point, like if you were like, oh, I want to go to, I want to drive to Burlington from here, and then you went into Google Maps and type that in, because we also share our information with Google, then that there's an event there, then Google would know and say, oh, it's, it would change your arrival time, basically.
And OnStar, do you have OnStar or whatever that?
Yes.
That also gives you that kind of trip information if you have OnStar. My car doesn't have to have it.
Does it have speakers?
It's an AM radio.
A-track.
I got some A-track at home over here.
I'll say my dad's car has 8-track, and I love getting in there with him. Sometimes we'll put in the old 8-track Beach Boys, and we have fun.
I know, they make fun of my vehicle, but it should confirm with people that I'm not profligate in my spending.
Highway Safety Improvement Program, I don't need to camp on this slide unless you want me to, but it's just to show you all that we're looking at all the different facets of safety. So it's not just infrastructure, it's not even just behavior, but there's a certain thing about like safer vehicles. All of our cars are getting safer. So that's a part of this equation. Safer road users, people are part of the equation too. And so we're trying to encourage people to make good choices. It's, you know, me with working with my 4-year-old, 3-year-old and 1-year-old kids, you know, it's like, make a good choice right now, you know, and so we're trying to do that with drivers as best we can too through different
Did you
avenues.
just say you have 3 kids, 4, 3, and 1?
4, 3, and 1, yeah.
Whoa,
So
you have time to work?
yes,
Work more.
Last night I was coming home from Costco and my wife and I were backing into the driveway. I was just telling Paul here, and I said we were backing in. And my 4-year-old was feeling sick, and the entire way, we're an hour away from there. So the entire way she was feeling sick, and I was backing into our garage, and all of a sudden I heard the pop, you know, in the back seat. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. So my wife and I were cleaning the car seat, the car out last night.
Almost made it.
Welcome to my life, yeah. So it's fun. I think we've all been. I'm sure you all have been there in different ways. So.
Well, not to that extent.
Yeah.
Well, you were there.
Data-driven funding allocation, I've touched on that. The bottom line here, there's a lot of stuff here, a pie chart. I'll just simplify it all for you guys. But basically, what we found, and this is really macro, and we can get micro in a hurry, but really stepping back to 30,000 feet, 70%, or actually it's like 80 to 90% or 70 to 90% of our fatalities and serious injury crashes are happening on rural roads in Vermont. It's not a huge surprise because if you drive in Vermont, mostly you're probably on a rural road anyway, but that's what the data is showing. And so we're allocating 70% of our safety funds to those rural roads. Some of those are local roads, and local roads are like the roads that are owned by the town. It's kind of like the road I live on, you know, it's a dirt road. But so how can we get our funding to where we can move the needle in the right direction and be meaningful with it? So 70% we're focusing on the rural road side of the house, and we still have 20% that we do go to urban. There are crashes in urban areas. We know that, so we don't want to stop funding that. And then we need some money just to get network screening software and staff support and things like that. So we do
Well,
that.
it's kind of interesting on the highway fatality. If you're, first of all, male, drive a pickup truck, and it's a weekend, I mean, you're seeing where, and there's a high rate of DUI combined with seatbelt compliance. But it was very interesting when you look at the demographics, you look at the data that you've got relative to where those deaths are occurring. And it's kind of interesting to kind of put that together. Then the question then becomes is how do you respond to that?
Yeah, we're working hard to figure that out
No
and to try
pickup
to.
trucks and hermetically seal all males till age 28 or
So
something.
you're stereotyping pickups and drinking.
No, that's the data. That's what the highway, if you look at highway fatality, you look at those combination of risk factors and.
Try not to be offended.
Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you're not,
Women don't drive pickup.
you're not a young male, I hate to tell you.
Now I'm offended.
Yeah.
That's
Then
harassment.
drive a Jeep.
That's harassment right there.
Oh, yeah, ageism, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I'm older than you, so I can say it.
Go right ahead.
What was that stat again on it was injuries or deaths about the?
So both. So for fatalities, it's like 80 to 90% of our fatalities are on the rural roads, and it's about 70 to 80% of our serious injury crashes are on the
And
rural roads. Yeah.
How does that match up with vehicles miles traveled?
Yep. So vehicle miles traveled are also much higher on the rural roads too. So it kind of makes sense. Yeah, that would be how the statistics
It's not,
fall out.
the data isn't showing that rural roads are more dangerous, for example.
Correct. It's basically showing that it's just showing that that's simply where the crashes are occurring. I know what your point is. And you're absolutely right. It's not
And you're at that point, if they're 90% construction, is that referring to the budget or what is that referring to? This pie chart is time, money, what is it?
Yeah, so we're looking, so this pie chart is just showing how we're allocating our funding, and the 90% construction is just saying that we are trying to get 90% of our money, so it actually affects change. It does something to the road to improve it. And the 10% is stuff that's like, paying for, again, like software for us to better slice and dice the data, staff support, things like that. We're
Would
really
that
just trying
include
to.
something like a roundabout that makes it safer, or
Yep.
just talking about
It,
lines and?
no, it
signs?
could be a roundabout, it could be signs, it could be lines, yeah. TMC we talked about, but this is just a quick picture showing you, the colorful one is just showing you the new system. And you'll see that's Vermont, New Hampshire and Maine. They have the same software, so if you're traveling and the folks in Maine or New Hampshire are using this, have the same software on their phones.
What are all those green icons?
Yep, so they're different ones. So some of these are showing just where we have weather stations along the state, and that's what the green ones are showing.
Other cameras or?
Yep, it could. They would show the camera showing a picture, and you can actually click on those and see what it looks like there. That's showing a picture of the road that wherever we clicked, we got this picture, that still shot. That's showing what the road looks like within 5 minutes of the picture. And so yeah, you can see full closures are the red circles with the red line. It's just kind of different. You can go over here and click on different things and just see information about the
A lot
roads.
of red this morning.
Well, click on one, see what it tells you.
Nothing in Danville, it's all fine there.
No, it was fine.
Okay, sorry.
The cameras are great. Are we planning to expand and put more out there?
Yeah, we actually just put 4 more out this past summer, around the state. And so
You have one in Sharon and you have one in Cabot.
yep.
What's our intention? Ultimately, one every 10 square miles?
We don't necessarily have that. We do have an ITS plan, intelligent transportation system plan. But we don't, as far as the cameras, we really try to put them out so they're basically, we have good enough coverage for the different roads. But there are certain stretches of road where, you have one, I'm trying to think like on, on like say we had one like a Route 2, you might not need one even 10 miles down the road. So it's hard to apply a specific rule for that. But if we're on the interstate, you might want one within 10 miles. So we really do site-specific evaluation, and we work with our maintenance folks a lot on that too, because the cameras they don't just serve the public. I mean, they're a great tool for the public, but they also serve our maintenance folks, because with the camera comes sensors that are gathering other information. And they're not cheap, and they take maintenance, and we have to go out there, and my crew is probably out there right now working on something, I'm sure. And so we have to just use like site specific and figure out where is the need. So we work with our maintenance folks to do that. And we do take input from the public. In fact, we had some that were up in the northwest side where people were like, hey, we'd really like to see, pictures of, to get some footage of, Route 2 in that area. So we made sure we got them up there. But the public, I will say, when a camera goes down, I hear about it. The public usually calls in saying, hey, that camera's down. And so we know that they're being used, and people go to the site and click on them, especially this day like today.
Well, there's certain sections of road where you have very dramatic weather change. Sheffield Heights is one,
Yep.
for example, and then they're on 89 down through, is it Royalton? There's certain areas there where there've been a lot of.
The one right outside of South Burlington and right French Hill or whatever it is down
Yes.
through there. That one just goes from normal to dangerous.
But you're doing right along with plow truck drivers, and this was essential software for them to know when they need to get out there. When you have a lot of hours you got to cover, these things are great to just manage labor, staffing, and so on.
Oh, I just.
So I'm glad to hear you
lost that
bring more
camera this
Yeah.
morning.
I didn't know there was a camera there.
Oh, yes. But I was not driving, I was carpooling.
I'm just kind of glossing, there's some things on there, but I know we're running low on time. I just wanted to state highway safety office. So behavioral side of the house here within our bureau, we're working hard on the behavioral and trying to get information out to people to hopefully change their behavior. And we do that working with law enforcement, but also educational entities, Department of Health, first responders, and we grant them money, but we also partner with them. And for example, the Drive Well Vermont campaign, you may have seen some of those like commercials, even on your smartphone kind of thing, where we are trying to target, in some cases, we even do, it's called geofencing, where you actually go to certain areas where there's high crashes, and we can actually like kind of blitz it, with a lot of messaging in that area, specifically trying to pull the numbers down. And so we're using technology to our benefit and trying to change behavior as best we can. And so there's stuff we can do. And then, like I said, in the end, people have to make good choices when they get in that car. We can't control everything everybody does. So we just want them to be aware of like, this is what's going on out there. This is what the data is showing. And it's people like us. It's sometimes you hear, oh, it's all the out-of-staters, and you look at the data, it's like, well, actually it's not. Like there are some out-of-staters in that data, but it's a lot of in-staters, it's like, we've looked and the problem could be us, in some cases.
And we had a situation where the homeowner was complaining about this one road and the speed and all that, and just begged for law enforcement to go and set up there. The first person they caught was the guy that complained.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, true story. How do you decide where the cameras go? Just a quick look at this, looks like there's maybe more cameras where there's more traffic.
Sometimes, yeah.
New Hampshire, like as you get closer to southern New Hampshire, past Manchester seems to be a camera every mile.
It really depends. So yes, so it is site specific, and then there are times also where we are trying to get tighter data on the roadway and the conditions of the roadway. And I'll give you an example on Route 4 coming into Rutland. I think it's Hogback Mountain, actually, I believe. And on one side, it'll be like almost summer conditions. On the other side, it's like, blustery like today. And so there's an example where we have two sites and probably have two cameras, because as long as we're there, we'll put the camera in. But it's as much for even just the roadway sensor data as it is. So in some cases, we don't really need the camera. We're really trying to get that data to our maintenance folks, but the camera's there too.
Are they remote or wired?
They're remote. So they're oftentimes through a cellular network. And so we can talk to them. Yeah. In some cases they're hardwired, but mostly it's remote.
Cell service on that section of Route 2.
That's another challenge too. So if we don't have good service,
there's no cell service
Yeah.
between Marshfield and West Danville.
Just about right there. There's a little bit right there as you're pitching down that hill, but yeah, it's spotty.
and power too. I mean, that's another challenge. And so if you don't have power, we can't hardwire power. Then we go to solar. We go to solar wherever we can anyway. But
Heights of solar.
yeah, but some of them, this is a day-to-day stuff for us. Is we're like, okay, we really want to have a sensor here, but there are trees everywhere and there's no power. And so we drive up and down the road with the team will, and we find the closest, best place we can get it so that we can get the data we need, hopefully.
So this is an interactive map.
Yes, and so this is just an example I just wanted to show you, because I talked about kind of the macro side of things, but we do have the ability to zoom in and we can kind of see, hey, you can see pinks and blue, light blue here. And that's just showing like segments of the roadway in the light blue situation. And then the pink is showing like site specific kind of intersections, high crash locations. And so
What's that in Colchester? Is that,
My store.
yeah, that's your store.
Traffic's backed up at its door.
It says shop here.
Yeah.
the zoom out, I don't know exactly which intersections those are. But it's just an example. We mainly use this slide just to show you all that we are, we have the data that we're looking at. That, and if you really zoomed out and saw the whole state, you're going to see a lot of red or pink and light blue and
So the pink is
intersections. Yeah, yeah.
those are crashes.
High crash locations. So there's a concentration of crashes at those intersections.
For you, Dick.
Oh, Jesus.
And just from me who looks at this data a lot, you know, when you see intersections are an area where, because there's conflicts, a lot of people trying to do different things, as you would expect, there's more crashes at intersections than our road. And so you see a lot of this, and then you have to go in and then say, okay, which intersections do we want to target? And also, we don't want to forget kind of the segments of the road at the same time. So you're always doing a balance, and then you only have so much money. So we're trying to figure out, how do we want to fund this, and where do we get the biggest bang for our buck to help the people that are driving on it. But I kind of wanted to show you guys this picture just so you kind of were aware that, you know, hey, they've got data and they have the ability to kind of zero in and really look at some specific areas and hone in on it, and the more of the micro side.
I know we're running low on time. One thing I'd love to know how V-Trans thinks about it, and I know this will probably fall mostly on the municipal level, but when I see all the red, yellow, green stoplights, I wonder how far down the road each of those should be as intelligent as many of these sensors, having cameras detecting road conditions so that we're communicating in the heavily congested, those intersections you just talked about, that same data, so that our municipal plows and our state plows are getting that data. There's already power there. So are we looking at making more of our stoplights intelligent so that we have this type of insight into our roadways in real time?
Yeah, we are. And so a lot of those, they do have cameras there too, that the cameras aren't streaming or anything. Those are for detection. You know, so they're detecting traffic. But if there's an issue there, we can log in from our computer. So when I say issue, there could be a crash or something, and we can actually see, in some cases, traffic backing up. And so I think that's about 67% of our traffic signals right now have a degree of intelligence, I think that you may be referring to, that we can actually log into from any remote location with a laptop. The few people, like 2 or 3 people that have that privilege, and can actually go on and change the timing real time remotely at that signal and try to flush the traffic through. We don't do that a lot, but we have the ability to. And more often, if we were going to do that, we'd be going and making, you make minor changes, and it's pretty amazing at what a minor change can do to a traffic signal and get people getting through it. But
does the state own all those lights, or do the municipalities own them?
So it depends. So we own, the state owns, we're in the mid 60s as far as the number of signal, 160s, the signals that we own. But as far as we work with municipalities too. So, you know, especially in kind of the Chittenden County area, we work very closely with them. And in some cases, we actually share, we'll go out there, if we're retiming our signals, we'll actually work with them to get their signals retimed so that they work well. Again, we go back to, the public doesn't care. They don't know, and they don't care. Like, they're trying to get to the mall or wherever. They don't know who owns what. So the towns, the municipalities, and us, we know that. And so we're trying to work together. And Rutland's another good example where we work with them to like, hey, let's coordinate our traffic signals so that they're all talking and flowing the same way. So that's definitely been something, even in the last, I'll say, 10 years, where we've made a lot of strides as an agency. Yeah. Just showing you guys data, that's all. This slide wasn't meant to be anything other than to show you all just the kind of data that we're doing now. And this is new within the last, I'll say, year and a half, where we're really kind of delving in and using the data that we have to serve different entities, and so that we can make smart decisions when it comes to safety and mobility. So I didn't really want to go into detail. I can, if you wanted to, on actually the slide and what it's showing, but just again.
Is that a website? Like, is that an interactive place where people, or this is just your own dashboard? Like the thing on the right where you can drag the year and the.
Yeah, this one is actually, and Allison, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is online. We are getting more and more into the interactive side of the house. That's ultimately what we want, is we want to be able to have data and dashboards available so the public could go in and see, like, hey, what's it doing in my town or area, my county even. And so that's something we're working on. It's still baby stages at this point, but one step at a time. Right now, this particular slide here is an example showing the data that was used to identify a critical emphasis area of impaired driving. And the data is here. And then what happens is smart people get around a table and say, hey, look at the data. What can we do based on this data and what we're seeing here to try to bring those numbers down? So for impaired driving. This is just showing, this talking about data still, and I'm almost done. One of the things we're also looking into, and this is not even baby stages yet, we're still working to get this data, but the data set we're interested in getting is called probe data. And it's data basically that our cars are collecting. So my car, for example, pretty basic car, but when I'm driving down the road, I see it says 40 miles an hour. It tells me the speed limit. Then I'll cross, it'll go to 50, and it'll actually display it on my dash. Oh, you're in a 50-mile-an-hour zone now. And so
That's a great idea.
yeah. So immediately I know that my car, somebody, some satellite or something knows where I am, because it's GPS. And so that data is out there. And so a lot of states, the majority of states, buy that data. And what that data is it's speed data you can get, and you can also, and it's real time, and you can also get volume data. You don't know what kind of car it is. You don't know anything. There's no personal anything. It's just, there's a vehicle and it's going this fast. You don't know even if it's a tractor trailer truck, but it still has a lot of abilities. And so what we did is we had some vendors come in and do some dog and pony shows for us. And in this case, they ran the data for us. And this is just showing you, this is Route 108 up in Stowe, and 100 keeps going here, but this is the intersection of 108 and 100. And it's just showing that, like, almost 20% of the week it congests. This is the winter time, by the way. It gets congested up there at the intersection. Then you can see some yellow segments, and that's 5% of the week. And the orange segment there is 10% of the week. But
Trucks going through a notch.
trucks, yeah, it was in February, so yeah. But even then, you can take that data and you can start to really see a lot of information about it, and it's real time too. So even our TMC folks could get alerts and know that a segment of road just went red, something happened, and they get on the phone and start making calls. And we're just trying to get that much better and more efficient at trying to make our roads more efficient.
I just want to say I love this. I think this is exactly what we need to be doing. We need our roads to be as intelligent as our cars, and this is telling me we're going that direction. And just to normalize it, at the Burlington International Airport, at the University Mall, and on Church Street, they're tracking pedestrian traffic based on phones. So there's software, and they're looking at how many phones, and if that phone's been there before, and they know how long you mill about. So we're doing the same thing in a variety of perspectives. It's not just our roadways. So, and it's great.
That's why I leave my phone.
Sure.
Doesn't work on my rotary phone.
Well, you're gonna get your cord longer.
Hey, I lost power the other day, and I had to use my rotary phone, so it's still got my grandmother's old rotary phone, and it worked. I was like, wow. Kids didn't know what happened when the phone rang, though. Like, what's that noise?
It wasn't even the punch, it was the old.
It was the old one. I had to do that, and I was like, someday I'll have to show my kids how to do it. They get a little older, yeah.
And Jeff, one question on this, does this data, as far as like how often it gets congested, feed into I forgot the name of the system, but the system that basically scores projects, the preference that has a 2 at the end, whatever that system is?
BPSP2, and yes, that's our goal. Our goal is to take this data and use it in multiple ways. And it's really, when this starts to, we don't have it yet. We're working on it right now. We're working through the contracting phase of getting it. But once we do, I think it could take 20 different directions, and I think it will, but it's going to take time. So hopefully next year, when I'm here, I can talk a little bit about that more, about where we've gone with it. We hope, and then for years to come, like, we're going to take this and we're just going to go in a lot of different directions, and it's exciting stuff. Like, this is the next step for the future, for sure. So
Has the state gotten away from plate readers? It's probably not the right group to ask that question.
They've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, so plate readers were still,
For law enforcement.
yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
Only
no, they're
one
not.
area, I think,
Yeah, no, they're not.
reports. We got a report on that every year.
They're virtually non-existent now.
There was concern about that for privacy.
So there was a time when that was
Well,
going to be every.
And I guess where it was is we're talking about collecting data and all that. Andy had sparked something, and maybe I missed the whole conversation about it, but in these areas where we're trying to get people to slow down in work areas, if you had a plate reader in there, and I automatically send them an email because we have that information and say, hey, and we're just letting you know you were going 56 and a 35, and this is your free pass, and we're gonna let you get away from that, but maybe we don't want to do that.
Privacy,
Yeah, probably it's privacy.
In the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, the education, if it's educational, yeah, it's a big dollar amount, yeah.
Our neighbors.
Okay, anything else? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good overview.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
very good, very,
Good.
very nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. next
Sorry we were late.
have
No, it's okay, thanks.
Bob White this morning.
Where's that?
Oh, okay,
He's here just checking on everybody.
okay. All right.
No, just get them on the list here, rough this.
I don't know who's.
Drop it?
I guess it is from.
Yep.
You were right.
Yeah. 2 days in a row.
Alright.
Michelle's coming in at 10:15.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
I still break.
yeah, thanks.
Well, for the airport.
That was my breakfast.
My favorite topic.
Yeah.
I got a little spiel.
We're good.
That's good.
I thought you already gave us your spiel.
Hey, Senator, first looking eye, get you.
Done it, and that was again, we weren't hearing from you again.
Pretty much.
We keep on going back to the.
Yeah.
Well, he's pretty good. Michelle, welcome to Senate Transportation.
Nice to be here.
First time you got it?
Yeah.
New introduction.
She's invited us this year.
Yeah.
Told the secretary,
She'll be back after today.
told the secretary we're a couple.
Yeah, well, only one of you. Well, depends on what day, right?
Okay, all set.
Good morning, Robert White, Project Delivery Bureau Director. And I know I'm behind a little bit and I haven't got much time, so hopefully I can get through this fairly quickly. I'm here today to talk about revising the Vermont state standards. So I heard in the last presentation about ITS and some of those things, and it really made me think about how a lot of things are changing over time, and this is really getting to that and how our Vermont state standards are getting updated, maybe, accommodates a lot of that change. So it's a pretty big project here. The focus is to revise the Vermont state standards and to keep pace with the national state of the practice in highway engineering. We also want to ensure that the Vermont transportation facilities are designed to current state and community needs. The purpose of the Vermont state standards is really to provide our staff clear technical direction. So when a project comes along, we have some framework on how we basically build that road. And it's also we're talking about access, mobility, safety, which we heard a lot about previously, and also the context of Vermont. That's a lot of what we're focusing on here. And I don't know if the Vermont state standards came out in 1996, I think. And in 1996, we were quite ahead of the rest of the nation. But we haven't done any major improvements to that Vermont state standard since then. So we're sort of lagging now. So there's a few slides here about legislation. 2014 was the first legislation that talked about, establishing multidisciplinary stakeholders groups to weigh in on this discussion, public and private sector, and the various
You
modes
remember
of
that?
transportation.
Yeah.
Where you were.
Me too.
What day is today?
Friday,
Okay, thanks.
that I do know.
What year though?
I know, I'm still writing 2022, when you're working in fiscal years. So we're 1996, we did our standards. The world has changed. We're doing the standards and you use them routinely.
Yes.
You require it.
Yeah, it's really the framework. When a project comes along, you know, what kind of vehicle are we designing to? What is the general standard of the roadway, the width, you know, how do we incorporate pedestrian facilities? You know, it's all these different things, but, you know, a lot has changed since then. I think some of you know, I used to work for New Hampshire DOT and I started with them, I think in 96. So when I started in transportation with them till now, it's been that length of time and a lot has changed, you know, even the vehicle types. How smart vehicles are, pedestrians, bicycles.
So vehicles are smarter than most drivers.
So is it a statutory requirement to follow standards or just like obvious common sense that the agency uses or federal guidance, like get the federal money, you have to follow standards that the state has developed?
So, like I mentioned, in 96, we were really the leader in standards. And actually, I was talking to Kevin Marshy a little bit this morning. And he said when he used to go to AASHTO back then, like people thought we were sort of crazy. Like, why do you want these standards? But the nation has really come along to that is what we want because it's a lot like MUTCD, right? If you have a standard that's in your state and it sort of reflects back to other states, drivers get used to the same type of standard for roadways. So there's design standards. I think the statutes are there basically pointing to the standards that we should be using. So M2D2 is a acronym. It's an objective here to balance all the needs of modes collectively.
Who comes up with all this?
Yeah.
You got more time. Haven't you, Pete? It sounds like Star Wars.
Yes, I agree.
So this 2014 legislation that created this stakeholders group, has that been meeting every since and giving recommendations and just, or it never really picked up?
I believe it was, and then I believe it sort of slowed down and maybe even stopped or it lost a little momentum. And I don't know exactly when that happened. And I'm not going to blame COVID because we do that a lot, but the last 3 or 4 years, we have sort of been stymied in a lot of these efforts, so.
Right, so maybe at the beginning, they started working on it in 2015 or something.
So who would be on this from the public and private sector?
So there's, let me see if it's the next slide. So here is
50, so there must be somebody.
50 plus stakeholders involved. Yep, there's a gap analysis, series of workshops, and I think it's actually coming up. So this document, which I actually did send to Mike, so you guys should have access to it, but revising the Vermont state standards. This is that M2D2 multimodal development and delivery. This is the work plan. This spells it all out in the work plan. It's actually a very well-written document. It talks about all the various stakeholders, and there's lots of them.
So they did this in 2015, but no revisions have happened.
This is just the planning document of how we were going to move to updating the Vermont state standards.
And how long does that process take? You estimate before we're going to have your actually updated standards?
That's going to be my last slide. I'm gonna tell you how we're gonna get there.
You have engineers.
I want to keep you in suspense here a little bit.
I don't know if I can take it.
Usually goes to the end.
I don't have anything to go to.
And she always asks that question.
That's why they didn't give you one.
Because I'm always mad. I never adhere to the script. I know.
So I'll just mention the 2022 legislation, which basically said, you know, hey, you got to get going on this and lay out the plan and get it done, which is what we want to do.
So it's interesting that we said develop a plan, but you had a plan in 2015.
Yeah, I think.
We like the plan, don't you know that?
Yeah, well,
And it wasn't also a budget part of it. I remember talking to Michelle last year, was that there was a question around the budget, like how much money maybe that's this last slide.
So you're second to the last slide, Rob?
I don't think I have any money
But you know
mentioned
what the
in here.
numbers are, or I can state those, you know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the numbers are.
So at this point, we are estimating it's going to be somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million. And originally, back in the earlier days after the planning study, FHWA had said they would not participate in that effort because they don't pay to develop guidelines. And so that was the quandary for us, using that much T fund to do this. So since then, we have repackaged how we are describing these updates, which will include, the standard guidelines, but it's also going to be integrated with, an online platform where you can, consultants, everybody can access this information. It's going to have like training modules associated with it to understand context sensitivity and, how you would apply certain standard activities. As well as some in-person trainings to get our staff and consultants up to speed. So it's a pretty big package. The engagement, everybody wants to be and have their hands on this.
Yeah.
And so the engagement piece will be really critical. And, we also will be using it to educate our partners from the bike ped community, from the smart growth community, and all of those as well. So we seem to be in a good position with FHWA. The money's in the budget, and
That's all.
half the money is in the budget because it'll be a 2-year process.
Is that Bloomfield Village that was just up there?
That's, yeah, right at that intersection of where the Devoneville store is. Devoneville, yeah.
Did I just steal your show or?
No, it's great. I was actually going through the slides because you were hitting on the points as they were coming up. Yeah, the one thing with federal highway is we always struggle because they don't give us money to update things. But if we're getting to a point where it's really something brand new, even if it's an old document, but it's really going to a whole new level, right? So it's brand new, they will participate in that. And so I think we finally collectively got some different things together and found a way to fund it. So it's good because it is a lot of money.
How much time? Or is that the last slide?
Coming up. So here's the carrying funding for state fiscal year 24 and 25. I don't think there's actual numbers in here, but finding the request for proposal is in the current status. Regular meetings with stakeholders are starting back up. And then here it is. So
I was working away.
the next.
Easy, Jay.
I know it's
hardly contained.
it's exciting stuff.
Oh,
The next steps, issue the RFP by June of 2023, select a consult team to begin the work, state fiscal year 24. And then the anticipated timeline is it's going to take 2 to 3 years to go through these 4 phases and complete the Vermont state standards.
So like 27 could be as long as state fiscal year 27.
Yes,
And this pertains to the complete streets, right? Like that's part of the standards.
it has a connection to that, absolutely.
So that's part of how you're trying to repackage this in a more comprehensive way than as a new product
Yeah.
that they should fund.
Yeah, so all the parts will be sort of integrated together to understand contextually how the use of the complete street standards works and how the standards that the engineers need to use to design these things work, and, maintenance of whatever the designed facilities might need to be and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, you can design an exit 16 diverging diamond interchange in Colchester, but you got to plow that thing a little differently. So there's, sort of understanding all of the considerations that need to be.
What is the status of that?
Yeah, we didn't see any pictures.
diamond?
You had to
Yeah,
plug her
I was
up.
gonna get an update. They had a meeting just last week, just to get an update. Just got a letter from someone from St. Albans. She said she's against it. It's confusing for older drivers and are usually found in larger metropolitan areas.
Drawbridges and diamonds, certain Senate districts. I don't know.
So I'll let you know, Senator, that my mother is 82, is excited
Yes,
to participate in that diamond.
We
and
will, we don't want a brief update on that subject. Please write that down somewhere.
Rob will get that for you.
Okay, thank you. So, just so we are, I know we're gonna start construction relatively soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, too, you wanted an update on the drawbridge, right? Presentation on the drawbridge and the diverging diamond. Yep, absolutely.
Isn't there a simulation to like drive through the double diamond?
There is. And actually, I think that's probably one of the most confusing things is, right, when people look at it from above, they look at it and say, that's confusing. But when you actually drive it, and I've driven the simulation, you don't really realize what's going on because you're going through an intersection and then next thing you know, you're over on one side, but you don't really know you're there because of, you know, various features that are designed in there. And the main focus of it is that when you have a high amount of left-hand turns, right? And so that movement from going from Costco's to southbound or coming off the northbound, southbound barrel and you want to turn towards Costco.
For the record, Senator Chin, that's an asset to Costco, okay?
Right.
I know you like to spend a lot of money there, so it's easier for you to go there. Okay? Okay, thank you. Doesn't benefit my story, right? Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
And the connection between the standards and complete streets, it doesn't rewrite the complete street standards. This is just the road construction standards in general, but there's.
They might inform, right? I would think the complete street standards would inform.
Well, that's what I wanted.
No, is that what?
This is gonna set, the standards are gonna set a base, right? And so other, you know, other documents like complete streets might actually take it to another level. So the one thing with Vermont standards, it's gonna say, this is the standard, this is where you go above the standard, and this is where you go less than the standard, right? It's gonna talk through those things. So it might be specific to some of those points in complete streets about like a pedestrian facility, where that needs to be, when it gets incorporated, when it doesn't. But I think complete streets is more of a supplemental document to it ultimately, probably gets into a little more detail.
But it could inform it.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that in the public engagement aspect of writing the new standards, you're gonna have those advocates involved in saying, no, this shouldn't be just for complete streets. We should have these types of pedestrian crosswalks everywhere as just part of the standards. That would be part of the discussion that you have with this 50 members of the state.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Fun part.
I think that's gonna be another time.
Oh, so what is the completion time for your double diamond?
Unless we're gonna get up there.
Oh.
You say.
No, I couldn't just tell me my why, for God's sake, I mean, 2 years.
Gotta wait.
You just wait. It's gonna go in phases.
It's gonna be like a train to Montreal.
We
3
gotta-
years. we were
gotta
told.
design the PowerPoint.
You have to get up in the morning, have supper before you have breakfast.
I'd love an update on the train to Montreal, right, go back down here and see what they
Yeah,
have
we've
to
been
say.
working on that for how long now?
The other thing was that there was-
Talk to Montreal about that.
3 years, don't you remember?
Yeah.
That was back with Chris Cole. No, probably Brian.
Yeah,
Well,
we should invite Trudeau now.
yeah.
I'm not positive of the completion date for that. We have phase one under construction. Of course, we have some legal battles still going on.
Skip Valley's still appealing.
And then phase
The
two.
double diamond,
Oh, yeah.
he's killing that.
Oh, sure, because he wants some more gas. Public elements there.
So I would hope that by 2025, we would have it complete, but
Gee, maybe I'll get over to Burlington before then.
Come across.
You can't.
Don't tell Marty.
Finish traffic.
I have no need.
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
They have
Appreciate it.
Danville house.
Well,
Yeah, Tampa cost.
I should buy stock at Costco, I'll just plug in
Michelle, you're
They
next.
had to pay you,
Yeah.
pimping their products.
that. It needs to be the spokesman. Costco's, my Costco spokesman.
Who's gonna trademark like price index?
Yeah. People, I'll tell you.
All right, so Michelle is here on another scintillating Burlington topic.
I think it's the first time Michelle's been in our committee, testifying this year.
What district is this in? Airport.
So for the record, Michelle Boomhauer, Vermont Agency of Transportation. And I'm here to give you an update on the Burlington Airport governance study that had been requested. As you recall, you had put 135,000 plus 15,000 for local match into funds that would engage a consultant and other resources needed to conduct this governance study to potentially look at a new model for operating the airport, which is currently operated by the city of Burlington.
Right.
The study the project was to include a working group and a 2-year process and result in recommendations for an update in the governance potentially, or to leave it the same. So we had understood at the time we testified that the Federal Aviation Administration would participate in this study and provide the $135,000 through either the state or the city of Burlington's funding. After we got through the session and got into deeper conversations with the FAA, they declined to participate in this effort. And so at that point, I contacted the Office of the Mayor of Burlington, the chair of the City Council of South Burlington, and the mayor of Winooski to find out if they were interested in funding this study and moving it forward on their own with monies from those 3 communities. And the report back I got was that the cities of South Burlington and Winooski were still interested in governance. They acknowledged that the charter had been changed for the city of Burlington to allow for participation on the current Airport Advisory Council. The name might not be exactly right, but that's the gist of it. And so Winooski and South Burlington now have a seat, official seat on the advisory council. And that, they are hopeful that their voices will be heard more clearly through that process. However, they continue to have concerns, but they didn't want to fund the study. So at that point, I reached back out to Senator Chittenden and one of the House members from Burlington who had been interested in this project to give them an update. And they said, we'll bring this back to the legislature in January and let them know. So the working group was not kicked off, and that's where we stand.
So we have no study.
No study.
But you do have two representatives that may not have happened without this discussion on the advice.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
Probably it's gonna fight this to the end anyway.
Well, I thought they had already done that when we talked about it. That wasn't part of it.
Oh, that had already happened earlier. Yeah, it wasn't clear to me the timing of things, but that was one of the things that was expressed for Winooski. South Burlington has had a seat.
Yeah, so I think that's something the mayor said why we didn't need to do it. It's like, hey, we already brought in Winooski, so. And what's the makeup of that word? I know you fight both now.
I know that the general manager of the airport typically administers the meetings. The chair probably rotates because I believe Helen Reilly, the chair of the City of South Burlington Council, I'm not sure if the chair rotates or if it's always been a Burlington rep. But I think there are probably at least 3
Three
appointed,
Burlington, 1 South.
3 Burlington,
one
some, no?
There are now 5 Burlingtons, 1 South Burlington, and 1 Winooski.
Oh,
I took issue with adding a 5th Burlington. I wanted that to be to the town of Williston, and that was the other topic. So it's very unbalanced.
So even though they added those other ones,
They gave Winooski and added themselves one.
so they kept their.
And it's still advisory. They used to have stronger authority. Jim Flaherty used to be a South Burlington rep on there that was the chair. So it has rotated over the
It
years.
has, okay, thank you.
But it's only advisory and they're outnumbered 5.
As you recall, last year we had the mayor and he's so defensive of that. The way, when I asked the question, how much do you generate a year? And he refused to answer. He said it's in their total budget. Well, I gotta believe it's a separate, they know exactly what they're making at the airport. But under the conditions they own it, it's frustrating because they have only Burlington police there, 10 police, nobody can allow to bid on it. It's all controlled by Burlington because they're making money on it. So I don't know how it's gonna change. I don't know.
Can I say a little spiel? So I'm the barking dog on this topic and have been for quite some time. And I just want to start by thanking Michelle and thanking this committee, as well as the House Transportation Committee for looking at that study. That was Maida Townsend's language. And as I was on the city council the last 8 years, she advocated for that. And so when I came here, I thought it was worth the discussion. I get that they don't want to do the study, they don't want to fund the study, and I get where Burlington is. But I want this body, all of you, all the senators in the legislature to know that I see this governance model as a liability for the state. This governance model is dysfunctional. It hasn't always been this way. It's going to get worse. And when the next big thing happens, it's going to be the legislature that's going to have to step in. If the Burlington City Council decides to defund the airport, or if the next mayor wants to convert the runway into a farm field, it's going to be the legislature that needs to step in. Burlington does not own the airspace above Chittenden County, and they haven't funded that airport. It's funded from the federal government, the state government, and the revenues generated from the use of our airspace. So as much as they bought a farm field 100 years ago, it is really the state that is underwriting that asset. I don't want to push harder for this study. I just don't know if it's the right path to go, but I just position the state to be able to oversee this critical component of our infrastructure. I would inquire, and I'm starting to ask of different sources, why do we have inside of a charter of a city, the city of Burlington, an airport with South Burlington and Winooski governance? It seems to make sense as you look at an asset that intersects multiple municipalities with an intermunicipal governance model. There might be a better way for the legislature and the state, as well as the city of Burlington, to maintain and honor the farm field they bought 100 years ago, to continue to have appointments and oversight and a direct influence over this asset. But as I look out a year or 2 years, I anticipate headaches around the airport. And that's when I know it's going to come back to us. And I want to position the legislature to be ready to step in as necessary as the friction continues to mount. And this advisory committee, just the last point, hasn't always been advisory. It used to have strength. There used to be an arm's length between them, but that changed in 2005. And that's where I've seen the devolving of this governance. But that was my spiel. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on a soapbox or anything, but since I'm the barking dog on this, I just want to say it.
You want to bar?
Yeah.
Well, then, if they decide they don't want the F-35s there, which is a big boon to the economy and a very great feather in our cap across the country. Certainly there's other places that would welcome that program into their mix. And that's kind of scary that very few people can make that decision.
So without this study, nothing's gonna happen. So what would we have to do to make the study happen? We have to fund it, or no? We have to fund it. How much is that, 135,000?
150,000.
150,000.
And we've appropriated monies already, correct? We have some,
No, we
didn't.
thought we were gonna use federal money.
Okay.
And the Fed said
Does it
no.
all have to be T-fund money, is what Michelle said.
And did we ever ask because there's other towns that are interested. So, for example, I think Winooski would be interested since they are impacted by the airport.
I spoke to the mayor there, yeah. They interested but didn't want to pay for it.
Comment and response.
So why does it cost money?
This is complicated, you have to have sort of fiscal and legal analysis completed. You would basically, there's facilitation of the dialogue from the various groups. You'd have to, a lot of the research theoretically has kind of been, the ground has been laid because the city of Burlington did an analysis some years back. I don't know what the date on that was, but and then, I think the study was envisioned to come out with a sort of a draft charter of what a new framework would look like. So, we don't have the staff expertise to do all that. We'd have to hire consultants. They're expensive.
How could we justify spending it out of the transportation money? I know we have a role because it's an important asset to the whole state, but would it be tough to fund $150,000 ourselves?
Well, I think you've heard last session, and you'll hear more this session about the significant amount of federal funds we're now receiving, the match pressures we are facing in terms of drawing down the monies for various projects, whether it's aviation projects, rail, highway, bike ped. So, you know, I think it's a trade-off. Do you want to implement more projects to improve our transportation system, or, you know, do you want to spend the match money, which would, you know, be, you know,
So,
20% of an 80%.
so there's no
betterment.
return on our investment in the future, nothing, you don't see any benefit. I mean, I'm just throwing this out, I don't have any idea, is there any benefit? It does support the whole state, and I'm just trying to figure out, we do quite a bit for Rutland, but I know that's our airport.
Yeah.
We have no control of Burlington. But
Right.
I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah, I think that if the situation were highly dysfunctional and in a point of crisis or financial
right,
disruption, or was anticipated to go in that direction, then I would say that would probably,
right.
you know, you would want to be sort of watching things. And, you know, I guess my recommendation would be to bring in the new airport manager, have him give a presentation on the fiscal outlook of the airport, and also at the same time invite the city of Winooski and South Burlington to come in and give their perspective on the governance piece. You know, I think that way you can sort of
Yeah,
get an idea of things.
That's a touchy subject, but on the other hand, it's so important to everybody, it's not just South Burlington.
So is the administration's position basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it at this point?
It's not the top priority, that's what she's saying.
I think the
I know it's not the top priority, but
I think the administration's position is that the funds that would be diverted to this would be more wisely used to match federal dollars at this point in time, because we're at risk of not drawing down all federal dollars.
so if we could use federal money, the administration would support it.
Yeah, and that's why last year, you know, if FAA was gonna fund 90%, that was fine.
So if the study, and again, I would support the study, and I'd love to have Nick Longo in as well as everybody. I love talking about the airport. But there is another path that leaving everything as it currently is, I wonder from a policy perspective and positioning the legislature and the state to be responsible over this critical component piece. Would it make sense leaving the language as is, but just pulling the airport out of the Burlington charter so that it's managed as right now, the city residents of South Burlington, which the airport's in, the city residents of Winooski, the city residents of Williston didn't vote on that charter change. It's just Burlington, even though the airport is not even in Burlington. But if it's a separate charter, I think from a management, a governance perspective, maybe it makes a lot more sense as we look to the 10 years out, so that the state has some say over who has a say over that asset and not just the mayor of Burlington as it currently is. Would that make sense rather than pushing the study, but instead just leaving it as is? To my friends watching this, everything as is, but pulling it into a separate charter.
I can't speak to that element of the governance. I believe that the legislature has say over the charter of the city of Burlington. So I think that would be a policy decision left to your consideration.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.